Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to Hogarth's Global Astrology. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, everyone who's been watching my channel and making requests. Well, as I mentioned in my video last week, I mentioned about doing the chart of Elon Musk. Now, I didn't do it last week because, of course, I made my retrograde video and it was just so important to get all of those details down. But following Sarah McSorley's request for me to do the chart of Elon Musk, I have. And here it is. I'll just hold this up here. This is the main chart, what we call the D1 chart. And here is the D9, what is referred to as the Navamsha charts. Now, what does that mean? I'm introducing these concepts here. Essentially, the D9, the smaller box that I showed you, is the X-ray of the main chart. So this is what we look at to establish the fruit of the tree, so to speak. So the main chart here, this is the tree with all the 12 houses, and this here, the D9, is the fruit of that tree. So, oh, I've got a little bit of a sweat going on. It's actually very hot today outside. Not been outside yet, but I'll probably go for an evening walk. But I think it's around about 28 degrees, and I'm not very good with heat. Mars in the first house. Anyway, I digress. So, Elon Musk. All right, what a character, yeah? What do we know about this guy? We know that he is a pioneer and an inventor, and famously known for, of course, producing Tesla cars, electric cars, and wanting to fly to Mars, etc. And he's a real character. A lot of people know who he is, and this is actually a really good request, actually, in terms of analyzing the dynamics of a chart, and then seeing what those factors that come in, that play in. Now, when you look actually for the birth time of Elon Musk, you can't find one. However, there is a little technique that astrologers uses, and that what you do is you choose the hour of midday, because of course it's halfway through. However, for me, the time of midday, which I've used, so Elon Musk was born in South Africa on the 28th of the 6th, 1971. And that actually makes him, in sidereal astrology, his sun sign is Gemini. And this is very kind of relevant and very significant for the rest of the reading. So there is no birth time. However, when the birth time of 12 o'clock is actually very good for Elon Musk, because many people that are global leaders or CEOs or people of significance, of some kind of world renown or very well known in their communities or in their field, are often born in those kind of hours where the sun is in the upper houses. So this is kind of like from sort of like, I would say 10 a.m. through to midday, and then maybe another couple of hours after that, 1 or 2 o'clock. You know, your sun is going to either be in either the 9th, the 10th, or the 11th house, some of the highest houses. The 10th house is the highest house, and because of that, and because of Elon Musk's influence, I've put his birth time at 12 o'clock, and guess what, it really does work. So okay, let's get stuck in. So what is it that we know about Elon Musk? We know that he is an amazing inventor, yeah, and a strategist, and that he's got a very strong personality. So it feels quite appropriate if we think of what does the sun represent. The sun represents our kingdom, yeah, where we build our kingdom, our sense of confidence, and what it is that we feel is we have dominion over. So with Elon Musk, the 10th house, putting the time at 12 o'clock, we see here we've got the sun and we've got planet Mercury. Now this is very significant because those planets, so planet Sun, well, the star, but we say planet Sun, Mercury, those two planets and Mars do very, very well in the 10th house. So does Saturn, actually, because it's a planet of status, although it does cause more restrictions and problems. But either way, any planet that's in the 10th house tends to shine very bright. And we see here that we've got, in the 10th house, we have the Sun with Mercury, which is a very, very powerful combination. So even if it were not the 10th house, Sun and Mercury are both sharing that sign. The Sun does very well in Gemini, and Mercury does very well, any planet does very well in its own sign. So he has two planets that do extremely well in the 10th house. And for the Sun, it's in a sign that it likes being in, which is Gemini. And planet Mercury, which rules Gemini and Virgo, but rules Gemini, it's in its own sign. So immediately that makes that combination very powerful. And it also means any planets that are in the 10th house, it's seen by the public and often seen by the whole world. And that's why the Sun also as well correlates to fame. So of course, if we go for that time midday, you know, Elon Musk is a globally famous guy, and more particularly, he's very famed for his very innovative career. But let's really look at what's really going on here. Like, why is this guy so good and so innovative at what he does? So here we need to look at the 5th house. So we're looking at the main chart, and the 5th house here, which is the sign, which is the house of what? It's a house of creativity. First and foremost, it would naturally correspond to the 5th sign, which is Leo, which is ruled by the Sun, and that's why the Sun also represents creativity. So we know there's great creativity in his career, but his 5th house, the 5th house is where we come up with our a lot of ideas, our intellectual property, where we counsel others. It's also the house of risk and speculation. It's also the house of romance, but it's a very dynamic house. But when we think in terms of risk and intellectual property, and actually kind of sharing knowledge and counsel with others, we can see how that is very relevant to Elon Musk's chart, because let's think of what he does with all that technological innovation and all that stuff he shares with the rest of the world. That is a big part of what he has. But here we will see we've got planet Mars, and it's in the sign of Capricorn, and it's with Rahu. This is very significant. Mars represents our energy, our drive, the things that we put energy into. He represents the soldier, the general of our chart, and where we actually direct our efforts. And depending on the sign can indicate how well that planet performs. So in the case of Elon Musk, he's got Mars in the sign of Capricorn, where it's exalted. What does that mean? It just means that that planet is really off the chart. It's out the roof, and it is just wildly powerful. So it has a very, very high dignity in order to bring about results in one's life. Now, normally it brings around good results, but it also means, like, for example, if it wants to bring a bad result, which may be fated, then that bad result can be spectacular as well. But most of the time, it basically just means a very, very highly functioning planet. And it's also there with Rahu, the north node of the moon, which is our obsessions, where we're insatiable, where we can't get enough, but also as well where we have that power to innovate and be dynamic. And it also shows us our path of destiny in this lifetime. So you can see just with that 5th house alone, you can see that this is a person who has a very, very powerful destiny to innovate, come up with new ideas and take risks. And if you think about it, and those that know Elon Musk's career very well, that is Elon Musk all over. That is something that he has done for his whole career. Even when he was younger, he created companies, sold them off, became wildly successful, and has basically carried on innovating ever since. So this is something that is a life pattern for Elon. and it's something that he has an extreme talent for. His real true wealth is his innovation and his ability to come up with ideas. And it's very interesting because I saw an interview with him recently where this guy was interviewing him. It was like a podcast, but it was videoed. And he was asking him, how do you find time to do stuff? How do you keep coming up with all of these different things? And do you ever pause for breath? What do you do in your spare time? And Elon basically said, I engineer, you know, he obviously has help, but he spends almost all of his time working on his ideas, because if the fifth house is also the things that we do for the sheer love of it. Yeah. So, and it's also known as the house of PURVA PUNYA, which means karmic credit. So although planet Mars is a malefic planet, meaning that it's cruel in nature, it's in the fifth. So in a way, it's a kind of a credit to the house, but the fact that it's exalted really just says, look, this is really is a credit. It gives a person an extreme work ethic. Anyone that's got a strong Mars or an exalted Mars has a very strong ability to work and put their nose to the grindstone. So we can see there with Rahu that amplifies that ability all the more. That gives you all of the amazing work ethic and application, or at least to the ideas, to the things that he loves. A little slurp. I also wanted to talk a little bit about Venus. So we see Venus is here with planet Saturn. Now that's not such a good combination. It's a very difficult combination. One point just to make again, just quickly going back to that Mars, using the Gemini technique, Mars holds the highest degree in the chart, so that represents Elon Musk's soul. Yeah, represents his soul. So you can see that even his soul he's active on that soul level. But planet Venus holds the second highest degree, and what that does is that gives an indication of the career. But also in a man's chart, it represents the wife. And planet Saturn can represent our limitations and our restrictions. So even though Saturn and Venus are friends in Vedic astrology, it's said that Saturn starves whatever planets he's with. So this Saturn here is starving that Venus. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that he doesn't have any creative talents or abilities, which he clearly does. But if we understand that Saturn represents the wife, we can see that there's been some issues in marriage. He has issues with his spouses and people that he has, or women that he has an intimate relationship with. And we can see this kind of difficulty reflected again if we look here, where you would see Jupiter. Now, Jupiter with Venus, and it's in the fifth house in Leo. What does that mean? It means that that Venus is afflicted again, because although it's in the fifth house, which is a great house to have, Jupiter and Venus are not friends. Yeah? And also on top of that, Venus is in the sign of Leo, which belongs to the Sun. And the Sun is considered an enemy to Venus because the Sun doesn't like to compromise in relationships, and Venus is all about compromise. So we see here there's a conflict going on here. When we also consider as well that planet Venus is also one of his career planets, and that Jupiter holds the lowest degree, which also shows the partner, we can see that there is a conflict here at times between his career and his romantic partners that he's got involved in. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of Elon Musk's marriage or marriages and, you know, relationships. That's not really what this reading is about, but it's more to show those kind of dynamics. So when we explore the D1 chart and when we explore the D9 chart, it can reveal quite a lot about that person's life. Also as well, it also shows whenever you have Venus and Jupiter together, it can show a hedonistic streak. Because if you think about it, although the two planets don't see eye to eye, they're both fun-loving planets. Jupiter is about abundance and, you know, the economy and the philosophy, the expansion of ideas and joy. What is Venus? Venus is the good life, yeah? The good life, relaxation, good food, drink, music, culture, yeah? The things in life that we really enjoy. So imagine if you put these two kind of life-loving and fun-loving planets together, you can have a bit of an excess. One can actually become quite very hedonistic. And Venus is quite naturally, it's very easy for Venus to become hedonistic anyway, especially in the sign of Leo, which is also very creative and very hedonistic. It does have that streak of pleasure. But if we also look here at the moon of Elon Musk in his main chart, it's also in the sign of Leo. Now this is a great place for the moon to be, because Sun is the king of the chart, Moon is the queen of the chart. And they do very well in each other's signs because they're husband and wife. So the moon does very well here. And it's in the lunar nakshatra, which is basically where the moon is the defining nakshatra that the moon sets. In terms of wherever that goes, that sets the pattern of your planetary sequences, Mahadashas. It's in the sign which is called PURVA PHALGUNI. Now that might seem really unusual, but this is PURVA PHALGUNI here. This is the nakshatra wheel where you can see all the different 27 nakshatras that make up the zodiac signs. Now this is really interesting because PURVA PHALGUNI, it is a sign associated with marriage, but it's also a sign associated with pleasure, joy. Again, the good life. It's very wealthy as well. It's a wealthy nakshatra. It's very generous. It likes to have a lot of people around, having fun and doing lots of cool stuff. But it's also got this element of performance connected with it as well. Now, what I've noticed is that when Elon is giving some of his talks and stuff like that and his presentations, look at the energy that he puts into it. It becomes like a whole kind of showpiece. Many people that are famous performers, or many people that are famous in general, have PURVA PHALGUNI strong somewhere in their chart, and particularly when it's the moon. And I remember there was one video I saw of him kind of dancing sort of like a little bit weirdly, you know, on stage. But there's this very much this aspect of performance in his chart. So you have that. So we're looking at a strong sun and we're looking at a strong moon. Although the moon is quite close to the sun, which can actually make it a bit more malefic. But the fact that it's in such a good sign for it, and that both of the luminaries are essentially strong, this really sets a very powerful foundation for a person's chart. What's also interesting is that the sun, we have divisional charts, but there's where we can look at different aspects of life. But there's a thing called SHAD BALA in a chart which shows the planetary strength in terms of when you put all of the factors together. What strength does it have? Now, with Elon Musk, his sun has an extremely high SHAD BALA. I think it's 685. Now, a planet that's kind of like, you know, around about 300 or so, you know, is probably doing all right. So you can imagine if something is like that high, this shows you just how powerful that sun is. And that is where a lot of that success in career, status, and being able to shine so brightly in that 10th house, here's basically his sun as well is just off the charts. So you can see we've got a strong sun, we've got a strong moon, and we've got an extremely strong Mars. You know, that's going to set you up quite well in life, irrespective of what your problems are or anything that you may face. That is a very powerful combination. And on top of that, we've got Mercury strong as well. So we're looking at most of the chart basically being strong. Now, one of the things that I think is quite interesting, I also do a little bit of numerology. This is this section here where I look at the birth date And for those that are familiar with numerology, what you do is you take a collection of the numbers, say like the value of a birth date, and you reduce it down to a single digit, unless it adds up to 11 or 22, because those are master numbers. So you can do this for names as well. You can write out the alphabet going from A, you know, all the way through, and you can basically write the numbers above in a sequence going from 1 to 9, and once the one after 9, you start from 1 over again, and you go all the way through, and then you can add up what your the value is of your name in terms of numerology. So with Elon Musk being born on the 28th of the 6th, 1971, that gives you the number 34, and you reduce that down to a 7. So he's a 34-7. So what does that mean? Let's explore that. So if we look, the number 7 represents trust and openness. The number 4 represents stability and process. Number 3 represents expression and sensitivity. So even just saying all those different those different attributes, we can already see those are parts of his personality already, for those that have had a look. So what are those kind of things that those people are working through, particularly if you're watching this and you happen to be a 34-7 or even a 43-7 as well, still applies. So those working 34-7 and 43-7 are working through issues of trust, patience, and emotional expression, and taking faith in the spiritual process at work in their lives to find constructive ways to contribute to others. Now, isn't that interesting? And when I bring in that spiritual element, because although Elon Musk is known very much for his technical abilities, we also need to understand that there is this element, the number 7 is also associated with the heavens and outer space as well. It's actually quite a spaced out number. And it's very interesting because what's one of the things that Elon wants to do? He's fascinated by the stars and space travel, and he wants to travel to Mars. Now, isn't it interesting that he wants to travel to Mars when Mars holds the highest degree in his chart, represents his soul, and it's also exalted? So that's almost like him taking a spiritual journey to himself. In a funny way, if you see it in that esoteric sense. So, you know, it is fascinating. God, I'm absolutely boiling. It is fascinating how these things can play out. And just to continue on, so the number 4, if we think about that, is developing a step-by-step process of self-discovery. The deeper these people go inside, the more they discover outside. Number 4 creates a downward pull to the material and the practical, family and money themes, while the number 7 pulls upwards to the multi-dimensional, like I was just saying. And in time, 34-7s and 43-7s integrate and balance between the two, building a bridge between heaven and earth. And I find that so interesting. Building a bridge between heaven and earth. So again, if we think of that Mars mission or outer space, those are the heavens, and trying to bring that down into a practical level for all of humanity to use. And we can see that in his Tesla cars and all the other kind of stuff that he's working on, along with AI and various different kind of things. Clearly, this is a very innovative person, and you can also hear that he's immensely philosophical. So just to kind of wrap up, let's talk a little bit about money, yeah? Because we all know what? This guy's a billionaire, yeah? 1 second. So many people are just like, oh, what are the factors that go behind making a person extremely wealthy? Where many people want to know this. Now, what we should understand is there are many different types of wealth. It's not just about liquid assets and cash. There is wealth of knowledge. There is wealth of love. There is wealth of intelligence. There's wealth of generosity and various different kind of things. So if you're sitting here watching this and you're thinking, oh, I'm not a billionaire, which most of us won't be, or a millionaire, or got hundreds of thousands in the bank, don't despair, because there are many other ways to find wealth in life. And what I advise to people is go for comfort first. If you're comfortable then really, and you know, you've got your needs met, that really is a type of wealth. Everything else above that is just cherry and icing and sugar frosting on the cake of life. Yeah. And some of us have a kind of a destiny to accumulate or accrue that amount of wealth, because the things that we do in terms of our gifts to the public are so vast that we just end up having an excess of wealth. So of course we can already see in Elon's chart, the 5th house, which is already a lucky house anyway, and the 9th being the luckiest, you know, he's got an abundance of wealth, but he's worked extremely hard and has probably never stopped working, you know, since he was a teenager. Anyway, I carry on. So what we look at in charts is things like, they're called wealth yogas. And there are certain houses that are associated with wealth in particular. So that is the 1st house, which is you, the body, the personality. The 2nd house, which is your values and your savings and your ability to retain and hold on to wealth. Then you've got the 5th house, which of course is the house of PURVA, PUNYA, of luck. You've got the 9th house, which is the luckiest house of the trinal houses. And then you've got the 11th house, which is great gains, liquid gains, lump sums. So you're always looking for a relationship between those houses. So surprise, surprise, in his D1 chart, we have the 1st Lord in the 10th. Yeah, the 1st Lord in the 10th. Now, what does that mean? The 1st Lord, because Elon Musk is a Virgo ascendant, and he's got Mercury, which is the Lord of Virgo, which is the ruler of Virgo, and Mercury being the Lord of the 10th house, it's in the 10th. So the Lord of the 1st is in the 10th. What that does is, essentially, it shows that that he personally will benefit and is known and attached to his career. So there's many people that have great careers, but we don't know them. But because the Lord of the 1st is in the 10th, it's like we know him. He's literally up there on the world stage. And then the next one after this is, and also as well, the Sun and Mercury do extremely well in the 10th house. And then what we also have here is the 2nd Lord in the 9th. Oh my God, I'm absolutely boiling. I might have to just like open a window after this. I just can't believe it. First proper sweat I've had since lockdown. Anyway, so Venus, which also represents the career, it's the 2nd Lord, and it is in the 9th house. So he's got the 2nd Lord in the 9th, which again is amazing. But not only that, Venus is also the 9th Lord. So it's the Lord of the 2nd and the 9th in the 9th. And Venus is what? A planet of wealth. If planet Jupiter, they say planet Jupiter makes millionaires, but Venus makes billionaires. And what is he? He's a billionaire. And then there's a bit more where when we actually look at the D9 chart, so this part here, oh my gosh, why am I so warm? Anyway, when we look at that here, we also see that Venus is the 2nd Lord in the D9. Because here, we look here, we've got the sign of Taurus, which is ruled by Venus. And in there, you also have planet Uranus, which is innovation, yeah? And invention and shocks and surprises. And we see that Elon Musk is definitely able to do that. But not only that, the 2nd house also represents the voice and what we say. And we know that he said some pretty shocking things sometimes, or things that have affected his value. Yeah, the 2nd house is values and things like his share price, etc. So that's just a little extra. But it goes to the 5th house. So you've got the 2nd Lord in the 5th, which again is an amazing yoga. And then on top of that, we've got Jupiter, which is the 9th Lord, which is also in the 5th. So although this is giving him challenges in his relationships, my goodness, it is very good for money. So with that, I'll also say as well, if we look at his D1 again, and we look at the 11th house, which is the liquid gains, in there you have Ketu, planet Ketu. And you see you've got all of these aspects on it, which are having an effect on that house. Now, the funny thing is with Ketu is that Ketu doesn't really care about money. It can either take all your money away in order to spiritualize you, or it can just give you a lot. It's just really not fussed. But what's very interesting is that wherever Ketu is, there's a small, it puts like a hole in the chart. And we feel like we need to put more energy into that thing. So imagine that. He's got Ketu in the 11th house. So a lot of energy is going into his house of lump sums and liquid gains. So when we look at that all together, then we can see and we look at the whole chart, we can see why he's so creative, productive, innovative, but also as well, why he's done so well financially and why this guy is a billionaire. So I hope that was really useful for you. It's always nice to kind of go into depth into people's charts as a way of learning astrology. If you would like a consultation with me, then please visit my website, which is the archetypalblueprint.com. You can find me on Instagram, which is at Hogarth Brown, and it's the same for my Twitter. And forgive me for being so warm today. Look, you can just see I'm just boiling, but when you've got Mars in the first house, you know, it puts a lot of energy into the body, and I'm always too hot. But anyway, I digress. So if you'd like a consultation with me, you know, feel free to book a slot on my website. You know, I'm quite busy these days with consultations, but there's always room for more. And I'm very grateful for those that have booked with me and have really enjoyed those consultations. So with that, I'm gonna finish up. I hope that gave you some interesting insights about Elon Musk without delving too deeply into his private life, you know, and maybe some of those relationship issues, but it also shows you as well why this guy is what he is and why he's so successful. And if we think of that exalted Mars representing his soul in the 5th house of creativity, ideas, intellectual property and risk, boosted by Rahu and making that his destiny. So there you are. I hope you've enjoyed that video. Thanks.